President-elect Donald Trump smashed through the blue wall Tuesday night like it was the defenses of Helm's Deep up against Saruman's forces, winning in multiple swing states like Georgia, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. Now we're still waiting on the final count from Michigan, Arizona, and Nevada. As it stands, though, Trump is very, very likely to win those as well. Now, the candidates vigorously fought for votes in the Keystone State of Pennsylvania, with the conventional wisdom being that whoever won its 19 electoral votes would be the victor of the 2024 election. And yes, that did turn out to be the case. Trump winning Pennsylvania with 51% of the vote compared to Harris's 48%. That's a difference of 155,000 votes.
Now, over in Michigan, a state that Joe Biden swept in 2020, there the ballots have not finished being counted, but it will likely go to Trump. As of this taping, about 50% of voters in the Great Lakes state went GOP, while 48% turned out for Harris. 15 electoral college votes were up for grabs there. Another critical state that Biden clinched in 2020 was Georgia by a very narrow margin. 2 Fulton County precincts were opened later this year after receiving non-credible bomb threats. But as votes began to be tallied, Trump pulled ahead there as well. He ended up taking 51% of the 5.2 million votes cast in the Peach State. Harris pulled in 49%. 16 electoral college votes were in play in Georgia. We are still waiting on the Sunbelt states, that is Nevada and Arizona, but Trump is topping Harris 51 to 47% in Nevada and 52 to 47% in Arizona.
Yes, so this has not deviated very much from my predictions in all those places. I had Trump winning Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona. I knew it was going to come down to the blue wall states. Now here is where Trump has exceeded expectations. Now remember, the expectations were basically it's 50-50, but he's winning. That vote total in Pennsylvania, that's 150,000 votes. Is that what we said?
So.
That's more. That's well more than Biden won the state by last time.
Yep.
Right? We were talking about, I think, 60 or 70,000 votes across 3 states. This is 150,000 votes in just Pennsylvania.
Yep.
So you can squint at it and kind of say it's close, but it's actually less close than it was last time in terms of the electoral victory. And then now Biden's popular vote margin was very high. Not that that matters anything. Here, Donald Trump is on track to actually win the popular vote for the first time for a Republican candidate since, 2004? And so his overperformance in Pennsylvania and what looks to be Michigan and Wisconsin is the story of the night, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think what struck me on election night was just the way you saw bad news start quite early for Harris and just never get better. There were never really concrete signs that you could look at from the Harris campaign side to think, oh, well, maybe we have a shot here.
Because it was closer in places like Virginia than she wanted it to be. That's when I could tell the panic starting to set in among Democrats, because if Virginia's close, that's really going to blow her chances elsewhere.
And I mean, New Jersey was hanging out there uncalled for a long time. I never thought, honestly, it was in much doubt that she was going to prevail. But if you're sitting at like 11 o'clock at night on election night waiting for someone to call New Jersey for Democrats, that's a bad sign.
The hope they had to have as the night was wearing on was that, okay, we'll give up the Sun Belt, Georgia, etc. She's hemorrhaging minority voters, the Latino vote. That's going to kill her in all those states. Forget about all that. But if she can hold the older, whiter, labor, rural vote and enough of the black vote in Michigan, Pennsylvania, she's not out of this. And that is sort of what happened in 2020. Things looked promising for Trump early on, or at least they had false expectations that things were looking good, and then bam, the Arizona call comes in. I think it was after 11 o'clock, and bam, the numbers start to flip as different categories of votes come in Pennsylvania. That's what caused and prompted the entire Republican meltdown about cheating and all of that kind of thing. So they had to hope that was going to be the story again, but it absolutely did not come to fruition.
No, and 2 things I think are really worth stressing. 3 elections in a row, the polls have underestimated Donald Trump's performance, particularly in those 3 upper Midwest or Rust Belt states, whatever you want to call them.
It's such a good point.
And secondly, we're going to have to find a different name than the blue wall now, because in 2 of the last 3 elections, Trump has won those states, and the only time that Democrats have won them since 2016 is in 2020 with Joe Biden.
Yeah, if you see like a D plus 14 poll in Michigan and Pennsylvania, you say, okay, it's pretty close.
Right, yeah, exactly.
The way it should be now. It's just ridiculous. Let's spend a little bit of time on the state of the congressional races. It is possible, we haven't talked about this yet, we could have a Republican trifecta on our hands. The Senate is certainly now falling into Republican control. It's just a matter of how large their margin could be. I think they're already at 52.
I think so. And there's some suggestion they could get as far as 56.
They could get to 56. Yeah. So Michigan is not decided. The Pennsylvania Senate race is not decided. Tammy Baldwin is not decided. By the way, these are all cases, and I find this remarkable, where Trump is going to win these states. So it's a question of whether the Republican Senate candidate is going to win, which suggests that there is some ticket splitting going on, but it benefits Trump.
Right.
The theory, at least some years ago, was that, well, Trump is so obnoxious and hateable, but some moderate whatever Republican who doesn't have Trump's coarse language could do better, and so you're still going to get people voting for the Republican congressional candidate who's more normal, but they won't vote for Trump. If anything, the reverse is true. Now, in some places like Arizona, you can make an argument that Kerry Lake, the Republican Senate candidate, is even more outside the norm than Donald Trump is, but you can't make that sense with you can't make that argument with Rogers in Michigan or Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania.
No, and I think that seems to be a change in this election, because you might remember in 2020 when there was the whole rumpus about Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, the Republican Secretary of State there, made the argument that, rightly in my view, there was actually nothing suspicious about the result. What had happened was certain voters had voted for the Republican Senate candidates and just had left the top of the ticket blank, hadn't participated in the presidential election. That is plainly not what has happened here in the races that you talk about. Donald Trump actually running ahead of the Republican Senate candidates, even when those candidates are not a Kerry Lake kind of figure, very inflammatory. You know, someone like Dave McCormick isn't in that category at all.
Absolutely, and we haven't, now the House races are still going to be undecided perhaps for a couple days. Remember, the House is so close, hundreds of members, super, super close. It had gotten closer and closer over the last term of Congress, right, as people retired. So we don't know what the state of that is going to be. We just don't know. We have to stay tuned. But a Trump Senate is going to be tremendously helpful to him for even without the House, to confirming judicial appointments, to confirming a cabinet. The cabinet's going to be, I don't know, Tulsi, Elon, and RFK Jr., people like the cast of Vivek Ramaswamy, sort of people that are surrounding Trump this time.
A nightmare for Democrats, that particular
Well, although, it would have been a nightmare. I mean, think of the cast of characters from last time, and I don't know, I mean, I'm genuinely curious to get your take on this. I could see the argument that these people, well, I know you have a lot of differences with them. It was Steve Bannon and Matt Gaetz and Miller and those people before, and now it's people who used to be Democrats.
No, I mean, you could make that argument for sure about Tulsi Gabbard and about RFK Jr., of course. I just think that for Democrats, there was this hope that all of those people, not only Trump, would be kind of stopped, would be sort of walled off, and would have to sort of slink off in defeat. And instead of that, they're riding back into power, or into power for the first time in Elon's case.
Elon is riding into power for the first time, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about this a lot in the coming days and weeks. Is Elon going to be the actual president? How much? Yeah. Now, Trump has never shared the spotlight before, and if anyone has kind of aspirations or ambitions of their own to supplant him in the eyes of his fans, he has stopped that utterly. He shared the stage last night with J.D. Vance and some other people. He's shared the stage with Elon a lot. Elon's imbued this campaign with a lot of money and energy and resources in a way that seems to have massively paid off. I wonder whether we're going to see Elon immediately sidelined, because that's what Trump does to everyone who is going to try to eclipse him, or if or not, or the opposite, or
No,
we're
and-
going to see Elon deeply involved in the governance of this country.
Right, and I mean, Elon is not one to shrink from the spotlight himself, clearly.
No.
I'm not a huge fan, but he has a massive megaphone. He put it in Trump's service, but he also obviously has his own interests, both politically and business-wise. He will want to advance those. Just briefly to circle back to where we began with the congressional stuff, this was a night that was really as bad as Democrats could realistically have feared across the board. So, you know, let the bloodletting and finger-pointing begin, I think. There's going to be a lot of that.
Yes, indeed. All right, we will be paying attention to all of it. Coming up next, we're going to be continuing to look at the results and talk about some specific performance issues that Kamala Harris, that's terrible phrasing, I'm so sorry I said that, with various demographic areas. We'll have more Rising right after this.